Budget 2026, capital gain tax, negative gearing, that is all the talks wherever you go. If you go in a cafe, if you go in a restaurant, if you go to a developer's office or a real estate agent's office, or you come to an accountant's office, that's a talk everywhere. So what's difference today? Today we're going to bring it to you. Key changes in the budget, what it means for you, and most importantly, not only what it means for you, what it means for us. Because we, being an investor, we being a developer, we being a businessman, and we being an ordinary person like you, what impact it's going to bring it to us. So we are in the same boat as you. We are in the same place as you. So it's not only for you today, it's also for us today. We try to make it as interactive as possible, and we'll try to give you insider from our point of view rather than only reading out what is been sent out in the budget. So let's start. Let me introduce myself. My name is Taral Khanderia. I'm your host for today, and I'm the founder of Universal Business Group. We started in 2010. I'm also a passive business investor. I invest in businesses, so I utilize trust structure. I'm a property investor. I claim negative gearing. I'm a property developer. So for me, negative gearing, trust changes, all those things make a big difference, huge difference. And that's why we have expert panel today from each and every industry. So let me introduce all the panel members, starting with Rush. You know Rush from the agency. He was number one across all Australia last year in terms of real estate agent. He and his team sells more than 450 properties a year. Rather than I tell more about Rush, let me ask him to introduce himself. Rush, over to you.
Thanks, Terrell, and thanks, gents, for joining us. Again, Budget 2026. Again, thank you for that lovely introduction. Biggest team in West Australia, do the biggest volume. So we definitely have the live data, live analysis of what's going on, live discussion. So we can be very tactile today on what's happening on the ground, what the buyers and sellers are thinking, what discussions we're having with buyers, agents, brokers, financial advisors, and developers as well. So and investors and accountants, because we have a few in the room. So the new best friends, our accountants. So thank you, gents, for the introduction, and looking forward to the chat in the panel.
Thank you, Rush. Now let me introduce the second guest panel member. He's from Queensland. His name is Aziz Poput. He is a developer. He is a licensee real estate agent. He's a builder. He's an investor, and he's one of the sharpest mind around in this room, and whom I know the sharpest person ever. So let me ask Aziz to introduce himself.
Thank you, Taral, for giving me the opportunity to be a part of this panel. Myself, Aziz, I am a builder, and we build, houses, townhouses in Queensland, focusing on Queensland. And also I have a real estate agency, focuses mainly on the brand new home and land townhouses. We do existing as well, but volume is less, focus is more home and land. I have a solar company as well, and I invest in properties and development projects. One of my key activities these days is developing project for myself and my clients, whether townhouse projects, subdivision, and all kind of developments we are quite involved with. And today's discussion, I'm looking forward to discuss in detail how it affects investors, especially in the property market.
Thank you, Aziz. Great insider. Good start. Now let me introduce the third panel member. His name is Mohammad Keshwani. He's a chartered accountant, and he's my business partner in Universal Business Group. Mohammad is the numbers person. He has worked at a very high profile jobs with big four banks and different stages. So let me ask Mohammad to introduce himself. Mohammad, over to you.
Thanks, Taral, and thanks for getting me to part of the discussion of Budget 2026 panel. So I've joined Universal Taxation 9 months ago now. Prior to that, I've been working with CBA for 10 years, ANZ and Westpac across that regime. My specialization is in structures. I've always worked at different structures, and coming to universal taxation, that's actually been quite helpful because I deal with individuals, I deal with small business enterprises, and we look after their structures, whether the company or the trust or whether SMSF, if they need any help with that kind of structures, and how can we help them with their. Please note and advice, I'm not a financial planner, so I cannot give an advice on SMSF, but if the client does come around with the help of a financial planner, we do help them from the structuring perspective as well. So yeah, now looking forward for Budget 2026. Over to you, Taro.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. So let's get to the business. Rashveer, when budget landed, you are on the ground all the time. So what was the reaction of your buyers and sellers on the budget night?
I reckon it was the most televised budget in the history of all budgets because obviously everyone knew about the news that was coming out pre-budget that they were going to impact negative gearing and CGT was going to be impacted. Some of the early indication was that if you had up to 2 properties, your negative gearing wasn't impacted, which wasn't the case. They went down the path of negative grandfathering and anything before budget night. So I know a lot of our investor clients that were looking to buy. Some ran to buy stuff prior but the budget night, but also slowed down prior to the budget night because everyone just wanted to see what happened in case this was a big hoax, in case Albo and the team decided not to do anything and just make some changes. But I don't know if you gentlemen watched the budget. I thought. What a delivery. It made me so afraid of the war and everything else was going on. And I realized it was actually like a magic trick because straight after that, I was like, actually, you've done nothing for the common man in Australia outside of the $258 that, they're going to end up with, which isn't in fact until 2028 anyway.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, it was a whole lot of look at this, and blaming things outside of our control, and then really a cash grab. So, yeah.
So what you touched based in just right now that people were rushing. So is it true people were rushing to sign off contract before the given date and time on the budget day?
Yeah, because there was some news that came out over the weekend where it was pretty like there must have been a leak or something. It was pretty evident that if you were in the knowing, you knew that negative gearing was going to get grandfathered in and that CGT was going to drop from 50 to 33%. So we did see a lot of clients in that Monday, Tuesday period just try and buy properties, which happens and is exactly what happened. So the ones that had their ear on the ground really took advantage of it. But for a lot of people, everyone froze.
Because it was not clear what's going to happen.
Yeah, they didn't want to go and buy something in case they didn't have to. I think, overall, the real estate industry is appalled with these changes.
Yeah.
There's definitely not. There's no support for it. Or at least I haven't seen anyone come up with deliberately come up with something that said, yes, we think these are great ideas. We think that it's going to cause issues with supply.
Definitely. Now, Aziz, what was sentiment in Queensland? What your buyers and your investor, what was their reaction?
Well, Queensland is going through, a very, in last 2-3 years, if you look at, or maybe 4 years, Queensland property pricing has gone double in most of the suburbs. So investors are already feeling the pinch. First home buyers are having the toughest time ever in Queensland. Yeah. So there is already, a lot of, stress out there with the first home buyers, and when the budget announced, investors were more disappointed with the existing properties as a second buyer. First home buyers, where they didn't know what to do because, they were still shocked that, this budget didn't do anything for anyone. It has only made their life little difficult. So I think I saw more shockers and more questions asked by the buyers, Yes, I would like to believe that, technically on paper, the brand new is affected the least, but still, it's a shock in Queensland,
Definitely, it's everywhere. And let's clarify that shock a little bit more. We go to Mohammed. And Mohammed, can you take us through what are the key changes in the budget in terms of property and trust, the key points?
Yes, so I think pretty much the headlines out over there, and you started, and I think we have touched base on those three key points. I think the first one is negative gearing. So I think negative gearing has now been ring fenced. So if you have bought a property before the 12th of May, I think you basically can continue and offset your negative expenses against your wages. But having said that, I think with the new investment properties, there are certain rules, and moving forward, that will not be available from a cancellation perspective or cancellation of your income perspective. You do carry forward your losses and until a gain is made against that. So that's the first one. The second one is capital gains that we have discussed about. So I think the 50% is now gone. So after 25 years that we have enjoying 50% tax bracket, I think that's pretty much gone. It's now coming down to indexation method, which was pre-1999 era, and a minimum tax rate of 30%. So I think that's going to be an interesting one. I think it'll be very interesting to see how the investors feel about that and how do they drive their tax strategies in that space. And the third bit that you spoke about is that trust was previously trusts were allowed to distribute income as and where they deem fit within the beneficiaries, but now they have now capped it at a 30% tax, which I think is a pure tax grab from the government. I think they have tried to, previously people were trying to average out their income and trying to make sure that this was a legal way of tax planning, but now all of a sudden they now want to tax on that 30% straight away, which everyday mom and dad who have driven their structures, who have kept their structures in place, now they are taxed at that 30% straight away, whether they fall below that or not. It's irrespective of that. So that's going to be an interesting one to see.
Mohammed, I have a question for you regarding that ring fence of negative gearing, because post the budget, an investor that was predominantly enjoying a bit of that negative gearing, if the property was negative gearing, because there's also positively geared properties.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And your experience with the banks, they were using that in their calculations. So, and with your experience with banks, do you think that those will impact then the loans or the ability for investors to get in the market?
Yeah, 100%. I think it depends on the valuation and whether the serviceability is there for the customers. So I think those are the two areas that bank generally focuses predominantly on, because ultimately bank is there in the business of lending money so they can actually make money, and at the same time they want to make sure they can recover the money that's available from their perspective. So I think it's in a good way, if I can call it out, the rental yield is going to go up, which we are expecting quite a bit, which means the property becomes positively geared or closer towards that. So that's a positive outcome from a banking perspective, which means the serviceability gets a bit better. But having seen what's happening out in the real world, where interest rate is going up with the inflation creeping up, the war that's happening at the moment in the Middle East, where everything is kind of hosh-posh at the moment, if I can use that word. I think inflation is continuing to creep up. It's going to continue to creep up. Government is spending like there is no tomorrow instead of having some restraints over there. So I think inflation is going to creep up quite a bit. So I think the people who can service their loan will become a bit of a problem statement from my perspective. Yep. So even though we are talking about the first homeowners and getting them across the line, don't forget the construction cost is going up. Don't forget the people are going to compete for the newer properties, which what they are talking about at the moment. And at the same time, there is no tax benefit, so there is no implications. And people at the same time who are not able to afford the house at the moment are actually renting. And that impacts their cash flow as well, because all of a sudden, if my rent goes up by $50, $100, I don't know what they can charge. Would they be able to save enough money so they can actually afford their first home? So I think I personally think from a banking perspective to your question, it's a good outcome, because all of a sudden people's affordability goes up, but how many people can actually afford? That's where things becomes interesting.
Great. And Mohammed, I'm bringing back to your original comment where you said ring fence. Can you explain terminology to all our viewers? two terminology what they used very commonly. One is grandfather rule and one is ring fence. What are those? What
Sure.
does it mean?
So ring fence in a very layman language is from a COVID days, if you heard the word quarantine, right? So we're basically quarantining the benefits that was previously allowed. So effectively, the date of 12th May is quite critical now. So anything which you had bought any properties or which you had signed up for a contract on 12th of May, 7:30 p.m., you basically can claim negative gearing and claim losses against your normal taxable income. So such as for an ordinary man, it's your wages or interest income, so you can offset that. But anything post that, you will not be able to claim that. And there are a couple of other buckets in there. So for the newly constructed property, yes, you can claim negative gearing against it, but for any existing property, you cannot claim. So there are three boxes, if I can call it. One is pre-budget date of 12th of May. One is whether it's a new property, and then you can claim it. And then the third box is basically your new or existing property that will basically have no negative gearing concept that will just carry on. So that's pretty much
So basically
quarantining.
what you're saying is if I'm buying an existing property after the budget date, which is from today, any point in time, I cannot or may not be able to claim the negative gearing on that property. It means the demand of a newer property, from your experience, Rush, do you think that will boost up the demand of the newer property?
I think the demand in new property is already there. What it will do is, like in the last in COVID, when the last time we had government tried to intervene and push building, it pushed cost of construction. And Aziz will tell you, it doesn't matter if you're in West Australia or Queensland, the cost of construction's exponentially growing every year. And what it cost us 3 years ago to build something is almost double now.
Yeah.
So this will impact directly increase the cost of construction. We have seen that with the war recently as well, where materials have gone up to 18%, which doesn't sit with the builder. It comes back to the end consumer. Who's the end consumer? Is predominantly we're trying to get first home buyers into properties or get investors to invest in properties to then house people that are homeless or potentially on the brink of getting homeless. So I think these changes will increase the cost of construction. It will also increase the square meterage rate of the land, because that's the other person in this mix, which is the land developers. For a long time, land developers have not made money through their developments. And these are multi-million-dollar projects that go on for years, and all the red tape that goes where government to actually release land in West Australia, Queensland, it's not that easy. It's an expensive exercise. We are in the development game. We understand it's not that straightforward.
Definitely.
And there's on costs and on costs. So I don't see this actually improving the supply issue that they keep hammering on. I think it'll actually work in a reverse manner exponentially as well. We already don't have land in West Australia as is. I don't know what the situation is in Queensland, but you cannot get land in West Australia at the moment to build a house, whether it's for investment or for your family or a second home. What's happening in Queensland?
Exactly same. Very difficult to find developable land, immediately developable land in Queensland. Even first home buyers struggling for land. The lands are being upsold, by $100,000 couple of months after the release. And big shortage. I have like 50 developers who are looking for development project, not getting one. There are heaps of first home buyers and investors who are literally crying for one single block of land to live in. Exactly same scenario in Queensland as well. Pretty difficult to find a land, and everything is extremely overpriced actually. So that's a big
So
problem.
when Rush mentioned that there is a demand and the cost of construction already is going up because of war and everything, and I cannot agree more. I've spoken to a couple of developers, couple of builders, and the people in the trades in the same industry, and they said the construction material already going up by 30 to 40%. Plus people like me who needs an investment property to claim the negative gearing, I'll be definitely rushing towards new build home. So from your experience, will it put a lot of pressure on the time frame and the build cost?
Yes, it will. Because, even after COVID as well, when, if you remember the scenario, 2% interest rate becomes 7%. At that time, I thought it will negatively impact the entire industry. It didn't. So the demand, I believe it will still stay there, but cost of construction would increase because of the material cost, which is directly linked to the Middle Eastern war and fuel prices and stuff, and labor, because there will be more demand, and there are more demands for brand new because of one is obviously this taxation rule change. The second demand was because that $30,000, even though I've not seen many people getting it, but on paper, first-time buyers $30,000 grant still plays a big thing in first-time buyers' brain, and they've shifted from $750 to less than $1 million with no what you call it, no stamp duty and whatnot actually. So it will still be in demand. Cost of construction is going to go up. Further, the industry would struggle to have enough resources to keep up with cost of construction. At the same time, the demand would be there because a lot of Asians, migrants, Indians, Sri Lankan, Pakistanis, Nepalese, everyone coming from Asia, they have the psychology of, having brand new home as to live in or as an investment. They are actually driving a market quite a bit compared to someone from Europe. They would prefer bigger land and even an older house. So Asians, I believe, are driving up, still the brand new market.
But from your experience, who will be the bigger winner, the biggest winner of this panic mode? Will it be an investor or will it be the tradesman?
I have the answer for that. The government. Yeah. The government is the only winner here. Yeah. Even for us who might have property pre-budget, we're only winners in the short term because we need to now sit down with the likes of Mohammed and yourself and then make projections on our decisions years to come. Do we go post 1st July next year under a new indexation plus 30% rule? When do we do it? What is the difference if I sell this year, that year? And this is a problem. Unless you can afford the advice, unless you have the resources to do that or the team to do that, you're actually going to get negatively impacted. What happens to that new aspiring, I've got a son, if he decides to be a property investor or a developer, what happens to that guy that can't afford it, doesn't come from a good family, that has an entrepreneurial mind? These are the people that are going to get impacted. The other thing that's going to happen, they'll have this big influx of charlatans coming in, sending home and land packages to the young and the ones that are easily going to be influenced by the next shiny thing, buying the fringes where there's no actual amenity and that. Going back to the land supply, you mentioned a very good thing, that how the government is, the restrictions in actually bringing more supply. I don't know if you noticed in the budget, they said we're going to put $2 billion towards releasing 70,000 lots.
Yeah.
They're currently already spending $20 billion in the same budget line. And that extra $2 billion is an additional 10% of what they're already spending.
It's only 10% addition to what they're throwing in.
Yeah, and they're hoping with the extra 10% spend to release 100% more lots. So for all you gentlemen here, you can see why I was very frustrated with the budget, because it seemed like, this is the fault. The fault is everything we can't control, but we're controlling by just spending more money. Like Mohammed said, all they do is spend money.
Yeah, exactly. To me, this is a tax tail wagging the dog at the moment. So I think the investment dog. So I think that's what I'm really worried about at the moment. People used to, if people had the idea that the negative gearing and the capital gains benefit that was offsetting and driving the decisions, now all of a sudden with the construction cost increase and everything, I think that will offset all the tax benefits that was available, because I think, as you rightly said, it's already absorbing the market. And funny you said that the government will be the biggest benefit, because they spoke about buying houses for first home investors and for existing projects. And guess what they did? They actually were competing with the local mums and dads when they wanted to buy those properties, as opposed to improving the supply of the houses, so people like Aziz and yourself can actually, or Aziz can go and build and you guys can go and sell. So I think that's an interesting point you have said over there with the government.
And one more, I was looking at social media last few days after the new budget release, and a lot of people putting posters of Albanese that he is my business partner, no investment, and getting 47% benefit. So literally, this is the actual sentiments of the people. And one thing I would like to mention here, with reference to other industry, which also I'm in, and whenever there is a new incentive schemes announced by government, rather than actual on the grassroots, rather than people benefiting, the trade person in the industry benefiting the most. So for example, when the $30,000 building boost came in, all the builders, all the carpenters, all the trades have increased the price. That benefit didn't go to people. With the battery rebate, guys, so recently, last 1 year, battery rebate was going on. And in the battery rebate, the biggest people who made money was electricians themselves. So to install a battery, it takes literally 4 hours. Rather than charging $1,500, for 4 hours work, they started charging up to $8,000, for 4 hours of work. So electricians were making $100,000 to $200,000 a month.
And that is the biggest issue, during COVID, when the grant announced and even this panic mode, an ordinary person like us, we don't know who's making the most money. Is it a builder? Is it the tradesman? And we being a layman, we don't know what's happening. And people out there who has the skill set, they are just milking the money.
Absolutely. And it looks on paper, that builders are making money. Highest bankruptcy, if you look at the ATO's, data, is probably building industry, the highest bankruptcy. So if builders were making, yes, builders are making money, don't get me wrong, but builders are not making as much as people believe in, because there are a lot of cash flow to quality to supply chain issues builders are facing. The actual benefits, are going to tradespeople, which we appreciate. They should be getting the benefit because they're working hard. But like a battery rebate, you can't charge your clients 8 times more, 10 times more. It's utter madness. And even though after charging this much and ripping off, by trade people, actually, their quality of workmanship is also not been the greatest. So, for example, Queensland has highest number of, solar or battery installation because of the sunlight, but you look at the quality of solar installation has been the lowest. So, when government introduce any scheme, they should be balancing it out, and they should be making sure that only one kind of trade person or one kind of business should not be only making money. It should balance out the game. In Australia, to be a trade person, you need to be there for 4 years, have the genuine experience, which is a very good thing. I really like that approach, because then the quality would come out. But at the same time, because of this 4 years exercise, the number of trade person coming in the industry at the time of surge, can be limited as well. So,
yeah, Aziz makes a very good point. Most industries, and Mohammed, you can probably attest to this with your experience as well, are led by consumers. So you have the building industry should be a consumer-led industry. The solar should be a consumer-led industry. Most of the industries in that space where someone has to use their physical hands now in Australia have become the contractor-led industry, because they're the ones who are running it now. Yeah,
absolutely.
They're the ones who, like you said, can charge 4 times the price. The suppliers can increase the prices because of the demand, and the tables have flipped. We were in Australia. I've been here for 26 years. This never used to be the case where, the contractors led bloody everything. You call a guy to come and repair something in your house today, and you have to beg him to do your job. So we're in a situation. True. This is not going to improve by charging more taxes to businesses.
Definitely. Before we go to real crush CGT, capital gain tax, and the numbers, I want to ask something to Rash. Do you think the existing home owners who wants to sell the property, will they suffer big time because of all these changes?
Now, when you say existing, you mean investors or owner-occupiers?
Both.
Okay, so I think a lot of investors will do nothing for a while.
Mm-hmm.
The hard truth is, yes, these changes in the budget have removed a percentage of potential buyers that were in the budget, pre-budget, out of the market straight away.
Yep.
On the ground, I'm already seeing that. I'm seeing there's less inquiries for investors. The only inquiries that are coming in from investors are properties that are potentially dual key,
Subdeveloped. Yep.
potentially subdivide potential as well, those still have some demand in there. But anyone who had some good land holding, older 3x1 on 800 square meters R20 site that can't be subdivided, will now have to think, do I put $250,000 for a granny flat, then raise the return on my investment? There's a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah.
And generally what you find with investors is as soon as they're uncertain about one or two things, they do nothing. Yeah.
Right. So what do you advise to your clients who wants to sell, whose mom and dad who has only one property and they want to sell? Is it the right time to get into the market?
Look, your property will sell because there's still a lot of demand in West Australia. We still have a 20% absorption rate of properties week in, week out. So that's not going to change for a while. We still have a housing shortage. We still, West Australia still got good jobs. Our economy is really going well. So none of that's going to change. In the short term, yes, we're going to see a bit of that
Because of the panic
sideways
and everything.
movement. You got away with not such a nice property that presented well to the market. You're not going to get. The market's going to. This market's going to smash you if your home doesn't look good, doesn't feel right. If you take shortcuts in actually doing the renovations, all those things, buyers are now have panicky, fussiness around. They're actually saying, I actually don't like what I see now, so I'm going to go buy the one
It's
next
like
door.
a buyer's market coming up.
It's still a seller's market, but it's good to see buyers have some choice, which means that if your property doesn't deliver great presentation and fundamentally isn't priced properly and doesn't have a good marketing strategy in place, you can't get lucky. This isn't the market to get lucky. It's the market to get strategic.
Strategic, and you need the right person to sell and
Yeah.
support.
Yeah.
Saying that, let's work on the numbers. Capital gain tax, that was another big thing of the budget. 50% discount and indexation method. Can you give us some sort of example so people can understand in plain language? Or you can give me an answer to this example. Let's say if I buy $1 million property today. After 4 years, I sell that property for $1.4 million. Every year, I'm losing $10,000 in that property. $1 million property, keep it for 4 years, sell it for $1.4 million after 4 years. Every year, I'm losing $10,000. Earlier was very different, very simple, that I could claim that $10,000 against my income and I couldn't claim that negative gearing in my tax returns. And I could get 50% discount straight away on the gain I make. Now, under the new rules, how it's different?
Yeah, so I think you're touch basing on two different concepts. One's negative gearing and the other one's capital gains at the moment.
Main focus we want to hear is capital gain tax.
So let's talk about capital gains at the moment. So imagine a property in your example was bought for $1 million, kept it for 4 years, and you sell it for 1.4. So under the existing regime, because still existence or old regime, whichever way you want to look at it, I think the existing structure allowed you for the capital gains of 400,000, you were allowed to discount 50%, which is 200,000, and then let's say your maximum tax rate, marginal tax rate is 47%, so you were taxed on 200,000 at 47%, and you paid the tax on those numbers effectively. But now under the indexation method, what the government has allowed you to do is on $400,000 basically, so 100,000, let's say the CPI indexation is happening every year of say 3%. So basically your property, which was $1 million in 4 years from down the track, is worth $101.15 million or something along those like in indexation. Let's say the property was worth $1 million, it started with $1 million. Under the indexation, it will be worth around say $1.02 million after indexation over there. So your profit is essentially $380,000, and on $380,000 you'll be taxed at a minimum 30%, or if you're on the 47% tax bracket, you'll be taxed at 47%. So I think that's where it kind of negates or the property benefits that was there. However, if your indexation, if you hold the property from a long-term perspective, let's say it's for 10 years, where indexation can actually outweigh the benefits of 50% discount, because on indexation, if you start adding up, it becomes 40% or 50% on $1 million. then all of a sudden the property that was worth 1 million could actually be worth 1.3 million based on indexation, and your profit drops down to only $100,000.
So basically what you're saying, and what I understood, if please correct me if I understood correctly, that in the past people were buying property for and they keep it for 1 or 2 years and they sell it on 2 years. For example, if you go to Harrisdale or Piara Waters, or if you go to in Elizabeth in South Australia, or Blacktown in New South Wales, or maybe Ripley or Springwood in Queensland, people made money in 2 years, they exit out because of a 50% capital gain discount. Now, in this case, the longer you hold the property, the better for you. So that could be a strategy point.
100%. I think that is the way from a capital gains perspective, the indexation method works. And also, I think with Rash, we were discussing where if it's a quality asset, right? So if you are going to make a positively gated properties, and if you're going to have a quality asset that increases the valuation of the property, which has better schools, better infrastructure, better amenities around them, those will give you a long-term yield. And I think then the indexation method tends to basically offset all the 50% discount that we're getting. So I think there is a lot more positive. That's how I look at it from that perspective, from an investor's perspective, that if you've bought the right stock and the right investment, I think this actually could be more beneficial from a tax perspective as opposed to 50% discount. But whereas for the lack of better words, the flip out of the properties that was being done across all of Australia, where people held it for a year and a half, just do tune-ups and sell it off and make a good margin on there and get 50% discount. I think.
So if I want to flip the property, I need to be very careful. If I want to hold it for a long term, that could be a strategy in place, which we need to consult to our advisor.
I think if you have the right team around you, the advice is very important. I don't think the ones that really are in the flipping business will stop doing it. What they'll end up doing is doing under different structures.
Yeah, that's right.
So this is why the inequality of actually being able to afford for right advice will become the difference.
Yeah.
So the ones that have versus the ones that don't have, that gap, that K economy will drive a big wedge, which is not what Labour wanted, but that's going to be the consequential difference of what's going to happen.
100%. And on that note, I was thinking that before the budget night, it was a mind game. And after the budget night, it's a paper game. So mind game is, before the budget night, I used to close my eyes. I said, okay, I want to buy this property. I'm going to buy it. I'm going to rent it out. I'm going to lose this much money. So I'm going to lose 10,000. My income is coming from business. I offset and I'm happy. I'm still getting 50% discount. So I could run the calculation in my brain within a minute. Now, after the budget, it's not mind game anymore. It's a paper game. I need a strategy. I need something in place. I need a proper planning, and I need trusted advisor, not only accountants, but real estate plus developers, a builder, a team in place, which can guide you to draft that strategy in the right way. Isn't it? So,
and this would recall the basic fundamentals of investment, long term. I believe now everyone would be thinking in any investment longer term gain, and that's when there'll be benefit more than within the short term. There'll still be, as you rightly said, Rash, there still will be flippers in the market. They still flip in the short term for sure. Some people would flip intentionally. Some people would flip because they can't afford the repayment because of the rising interest rates. But long term investors will obviously get more benefits. And as you rightly said, right structure, very, very, very important.
Yeah. But do you think if flippers are there, they're still going to use different structure and they're going to flip out the properties? But will there be a capital growth of what we have seen in the past?
I think with anything, it's what you buy in. Your buy-in price is very important, the structure. And one of the things we don't realize about these people that are in the flipping business are not using, they're not using normal structures. They're not financing these properties like you and I would be through our banks and our second, third tier lenders. They're actually using mum and dads with money in the super. So they're already doing takeover deals. They're already doing things very uniquely. So I don't think it's going to stop them, because for them it's on a balance sheet already.
Yeah.
You give me money at 15%. I go in there, make these capital improvements. I sell them. I pay them off. They're still making money. They're still making money. That's not going to change. What it will change is that sorry to all the IT guys, but that guy who sits in IT somewhere in Sydney, has a high income, earning $250,000, said, "Oh, I'll just buy in this area because the fundamentals look great, and I'll just buy here one, and then I'll use that asset there, and then 2 years capital growth happens, and then I'll sell off to this," and I think it'll impact the buyer's agency industry. Yeah,
Definitely. 100%.
they'll need to start looking and retooling their businesses to actually being more strategic in the long run. What they have been doing is doing the herd buying, which is go in an area, buy stuff, which has failed for them recently in Melbourne because they use data sets, as they keep saying, So a lot of them moved into Melbourne. A lot of them, I don't think their clients have actually made money in the last 2-3 years. They've actually lost money. So I think it's good to see fundamentally that the government is not going to take care of you and your business. You have to take care of you and your business. And these sort of changes will mean only the ones that are strongest will survive and who can pivot into taking care of their clients long term will still be around. So that's my opinion with it.
Definitely. And you touched base on super. And one of the misunderstanding I've seen in the market, Mohammed, people said SMSF investments and property rules changed. But I don't agree with them.
Yes, okay. Can I categorically say that there are no changes to SMSF whatsoever? So all the discounts of 1/3 on the capital gain tax, which were held for more than 12 months, are still intact. None of these changes in the budgets are driving any of the changes to super funds. So they are completely untouched from that perspective. So if you continue the investments as it is, there is no requirement for the SMSF. If anything, this changes have actually driven and made sure that SMSF is a much more attractive structure because the effective tax rate is 15%, and people can actually use and think of and again, I'm not a qualified financial planner, so it's please do your own due diligence. I think if the Bay Trust and buying a property through a SMSF kind of makes a better outcome from a tax structure perspective, and if you don't need the funds, I think paying tax at 15% or in a capital gains tax at 10%, or if you're in the age of retirement and if that's your house and you're in the pension phase, you're not going to pay $0 of tax basically on your capital gains assets. So I think that SMSF has become more attractive with no changes.
What I
and no
understood is
implications.
you saying is as people may incline more towards SMSF and investment through SMSF.
100%, that's one of the vehicles that I would use, Rash.
I have my opinions about this. SMSF is a great way to do it, but also a very restricted way to do it. You're not able to have control over your money in the same manner you would by doing other investments. So again, having that financial advisor's advice in place, strategy in place, which is not a cheap exercise to set up Bay Trusts and all this stuff. It looks good in theory, but it's not for the faint-hearted. I think at some stage in your life you have to go down that path, and a lot of people will buy their commercial properties as business owners under that structure to help put money in a vehicle in the long run which will help them. A lot of people that bought in the super funds have got lucky, in my opinion, in the last 3, 4, 5 years. Anyone with the risk profile to buy property has done well. I think moving forward, you'll have to be very careful where you're buying it, what you're buying. Otherwise, you'll end up in a situation where you might even lose your super and have to restart again.
Definitely.
In my opinion, the super buyers under a self-managed super fund are significantly increasing because, if you look at 3, 4, 5 years ago, the number of properties were purchased under super versus now has significantly increased. Yes, people has to take their financial advice, before they buy. But, a lot of people I've seen, they're telling that, their super has not grown enough, So rather than not letting the super grow enough, as it is under a typical super fund, if they buy a property, at least property will appreciate by 5% rather than not being appreciated at all. Yes, but they need to be careful. A lot of properties are overpriced when you buy under single contract. There are restrictions about the amount of renovations they can do when they buy an existing property under super. But the super buyers are also going to support the market, not getting it slowed down, because the number of super buyers have increased significantly, and it will further strengthen the industry by the super purchaser, because people, what I've noticed, after 2001 migrated to Australia, they've got a very healthy super fund.
Yep.
And every second, third person having the super about $200,000, they're going to invest somewhere. If they can't afford in Queensland or Western Australia under a stronger market, they'll go to Melbourne, which is not a great market to be in, but still a smaller entry point. Who can't afford here, they would go there.
That
it's
could
a
be- that
long,
should be,
long.
yeah.
It's a long-term game.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
long-term game.
So if I can just emphasize on the point, and I'll ask this to all three of you, right? If I was to give you, and if I don't need the funds at all, and if I was to give you super funds where you pay 15% tax, you have trust where now there's a tax distribution on there of 30%, and the company which is going to pay 25%, which is the vehicle that you're going to use from a structure perspective to invest. And that's where I'll leave
Should I
the
go
answer.
first?
Yeah, of
I
course.
would do it under a company structure.
Okay. Despite you're going to have some savings of 15% as opposed to
Yeah.
25%.
Because then I'm more nimble. That's the only reason.
And I think I would agree. I may agree with Rash as well, because I want to have my money in my hand. Whenever I need, I can cash up, I can reinvest, I can invest in a business, and I can generate a passive income, because I'm a businessman. So I may think from that perspective.
Again, my underlying statement was, if you don't need the cash flow,
Okay.
then how would you invest it, right? So purely.
But doesn't matter how much you grow, you always need cash flow. Ask Aziz, am I right? There's always project sitting next one.
Bloody accountant sitting with all the business guys over here.
but one thing, traditional mom and dad, with good decent income earner, they would invest under super. They
Yeah.
don't need cash flow. Small business owners will always need cash flow. We all think differently, but people having a 200,000 family income, they would invest under super, and they don't care. Even if they are paying $50,000 more under property under super, they'll still buy as a long-term asset.
Definitely. Now let's switch lenses. Let's go from a developer's lens, and that's where Aziz comes. Aziz, in the budget they used one of the terms, first buyer and second buyer. Very confusing. Can you please give us more insight about first buyer and what is the second buyer? What's the difference?
Okay, so if you are buying a brand new property from a developer or from a builder direct, you are a first owner of the property.
Okay.
So I'm buying a home and land package. X is a developer, Y is a builder. Whether I'm buying under two separate contract or buying straight from a developer who is engaging builder to build it, let's say a townhouse, buying under single contract, I am a first owner of the property. And as per my understanding, as a first owner, I'll get discounted CGT and with CPI indexation or whatever, So I'll get more benefit.
So basically, you can have option of both the methods. If you have a new house, you can have a 50% discount method, or you can have an indexation method for the new house. Okay. So first buyer, second buyer. If I have a house already, existing house, and it's a rundown place, I demolish the place and I rebuild the house.
Yep.
So will it be considered as a first buyer, or will it be considered as a second buyer?
Very good question. So if you are, let's say you are demolishing a house, one house, you are building another house. So you have not added any dwellings, you are replacing one dwelling with another one for as a better facility. You may be considered as you may not get the benefit of the first owner. You would get the benefit of the second owner, because you not added a dwelling to the market. You not added a value, more value to it. Second owner is like, for example, I bought a home and land, I built a brand new house in 6 months or 1 year time. I'm selling it to someone. Now that person is a second buyer. They will not get those brand new benefit. Same way, when someone, as per my understanding, when someone replaces an existing dwelling with replacing one with one, they won't get the advantage of the first owner.
Because they're not actually creating more supply in the
Creating more
market.
supply
The
in
net
the
effect's
market,
zero.
Yeah.
So in the same way, if they buy an old place with subdivision potential on a corner, for example, and they demolish and build 2 or 3, then they've created supply.
Supply, yeah.
So then they can use the benefit, or they have the option to go through under the 30 plus indexation process or the 50% CGT.
But the first home buyer and first buyer rule and second buyer rule, very confusing. And I'm not sure you already come across or you
We
already
met
come
politicians. Yeah. That's why it's confusing. Is so we don't actually know what's going on. Yeah.
across. do you guys feel there's an education gap in the market in this area?
Absolutely. I think there is more, more presentation, more podcasts, more, education should be provided to the new buyers in the market, and also what I would also recommend, a developer should be writing, as a special condition in the contract or add an annexure defining first home buyer, first owner rule, second owner rule. It may help, someone coming from overseas not having the greatest of the understanding of how things work in this country, so I think maybe an annexure in the contract, standard annexure would help. A lot of buyers would read, or their solicitor will read and explain them. So reinforcement is
That's
required.
a very, very good point, Aziz. Very good point, because a lot of the times they don't have those fact sheets in those contracts, where then otherwise the developer and the real estate agent is taking the liability for someone's basic understanding. But if it's in the contract, then that's a very good point.
So if it is annexure and I'm buying that property, my solicitor would explain me as a default that, Aziz, have you seen this annexure? This is not common. Let me explain you. So that triggers somewhere, So there should be a default annexure or something should go in where, it triggers, the buyers, or it triggers solicitors, it triggers developers, or it triggers builders to explain them. See, it's a moral responsibility. See, everyone can say it was explained in the budget. It's not our responsibility.
But legal contracts are normally a trap. And that's where lawyer makes money.
Exactly. And, a lot of times, I believe that, industry, every stakeholder in the industry, whether real estate agent, whether builder, whether a developer, whether whoever in the industry, solicitor, accountant, they have moral responsibility to educate, especially first-time buyers, first-time investors, someone who is not, who has not played the game to a level, So I believe that we should all collectively, contribute and consider our moral responsibility towards the society.
Definitely.
It's a good point, because a lot of the times people will say, oh, it's on the contract, so it's okay. It's not. The Constitution sits above contract law. Law sits above contract law. So with developers and GST under the margin scheme is a good example for developers.
Definitely.
A lot of the times in the early days, developers would say, it's not in the contract, so it doesn't count. No, actually, it doesn't matter if it's on the contract or not. You're still liable for GST under the margin scheme. But you make a very good point. I think more education through the real estate governing bodies, to the market, to the real estate agents. We're agents. We're not tax accountants. As much as you would think we should know the law, we should know this, we should know that. That responsibility.
But it's not about should. What we have seen, if you go to a broker, if you go to a real estate agent in the past, they do tend to give an indirect advice in form of that this could be the right thing. So there is already a tradition or a thing which is already happening. I've seen in the past, and again, very hard to control those things. But with new changes, it will be very hard for an ordinary person to guide, because there is a lot of technicality, a lot of changes have come through. Isn't it, Mohammed?
Yeah, no, fair enough. I think they will need some specializations and specialized advice over there. But I think what both the gentlemen are trying to say is that there is more education required.
100%. So we should be doing more podcasts, is it?
Yeah,
absolutely.
that is true. And then we also, business is risky for us as well. Yeah, as you know, as a builder, developer, real estate business, you're taking on that consumer risk when you actually sell them a product. Does it have IPEX piping in it, and all these other complications? Recently, Riva have an IPLEX piping annexure that they've included, which has made our life a little bit easier, because now we can ask the question, When was the property built? Does it have IPEX piping? Are you across that? Mr. Seller, sign here that you've made a declaration that you don't have IPEX piping in your property. And then in turn, when we sell it, we add that an extra to the contract. That's the education bit. So
Definitely.
that if someone's buying it, they understand the risks in which they're buying. And it just helps as an industry for people to have more transparency, and openness.
Definitely. From education, I remember now that, so I can recall we have covered negative gearing, we have covered capital gain, we have covered developer's perspective. What about trust? There were some changes in the trust. What are those changes?
So I think from a trust distribution perspective, I think as I previously alluded, right, there were previously an income used to come into a trust, and depending upon the income of mom and dad or kids in some matters, we were able to split it out, the income, and we used to make sure that the marginal tax rate is being utilized. But now government is saying, hold on, this tax planning does not work because I'm not able to tax you more. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to slap you with a 30% tax rate that on a trust distribution that you're going to make. So effectively now, all of a sudden, if I'm a 17% tax bracket, I'm going to be slapped with a 30%, irrespective of whether my business is earning that amount of money or not, whether I'm just hardly been able to just get by, but I'll still have to pay 30%, and probably what Aziz was saying, in some cases 47% tax business partner. So I would say from a trust perspective, mom and dad saying, here's my 30% tax business partner over here. So that's a very high level change. This changes.
Just a question, Mohammed. So that's tax before the distribution.
That is tax before the distribution, yes. So
Yes.
on the distribution, I should use the word.
And this might be a bit more technical, but post-distribution, do they get franking credits?
There is no franking credit concept in trust distribution. You do get the tax offset. So imagine if I'm on a 17% tax, then I think I basically the trust would have paid 30%. We'll start again. So just imagine the trust had $100 of distribution. It has to pay $30 of tax, and then the $70 basically gets distributed. Now, for the individual, if he's on a 17%, he might get a tax rate up to $17. That's all it is. But the trust has already paid $30 of tax, so he's not getting any franking credit benefits. So you are basically being taxed at your marginal tax rate, and the minimum tax you're paying is 30%.
Yeah, okay.
And the only other point I was going to say is it's hard to unwind the trust structure because the assets that are in trust structure, that's pretty hard. So you will have to pay things like stamp duty, for example. If you've earned a business and you're running a business or you've got an investment property, to unwind those positions, you're going to have that. So don't forget the implications of that. So all of a sudden there was a legal way of helping the mom and dad with the taxation structure. That's now completely gone. It's eradicated, and you're slapped with a 30% tax bracket.
And that's what I was thinking. And if for a moment, if I can take out my host hat and be a normal person, whole of my life I've planned up my assets in such a way that I can have a tax planning, I have asset protection, I have my business income flown through. I was feeling that I'm an accountant, I've done things in the right way, my income is coming, I'm offsetting my negative gearing, I have a capital gain, I'm going to pay this much capital gain. So everything was planned up. And suddenly you saying after this budget I'm nowhere. Means I need to change my strategy. Means a lot of changes. My negative, if I have a plan of buying 5 new property, existing house, because I don't want to wait for the construction, I cannot claim the negative gearing. So those changes for person like me, an individual person who's involved in a multiple ways, multiple places, need to sit down, rethink, restructure, and re-strategize.
100%. So I think one thing, if I can say that if you are planning based on negative gearing to invest into properties, I think that's a wrong way of dealing with that.
That is one of the planning. It's an overall picture. For example, let's say if
it's
a person...
like a fringe benefit.
I hear, exactly. I hear that's a pillar, but I think...
For lack of better words.
Yeah, I think it is. I believe it's a pillar, but I think
But trust also plays a big game, because trust, if they're putting a tax on the trust structure, which was easy to flow in money, easy to do a tax planning, which will become more complex now.
100%. We already had an example. There was a 55-year-old lady who basically has a couple of petrol stations and superannuations, and she's thinking of retirement, where her petrol station business is unfortunately in a trust structure. And both husband and wife, they basically hardly get by. They together collectively they're making 100K out of there. Now all of a sudden there is a $30,000 tax bill, which is on trust distribution, but on an individual, if they were taxed at, let's say, 50,000, the marginal tax rate of 17% when you apply is only a $10,000 tax bill approximately. So all of a sudden, there is a $20,000 gap over there within that structure, which now they have to fork out, which means they can't contribute towards their superannuation funds that they would have liked to. So that is impacted quite a bit, and that these are real life experiences and examples that we are already hearing from our customers.
That's a very sad example,
Yeah.
because that's the reality of most Australian businesses. Yeah, they'll end up with $100,000-$200,000 at the end of the year, but and have structured their businesses to help save them tax. But now we'll end up again having that. While it's an AI picture of their new business partner, the reality is this government is put their hands in entrepreneurs, long-time businesses in their pocket and said, "Oh, thank you. This is ours now," based on how we've
And
adjusted.
that is not fair, because being an accountant, we've been seeing recently, since last 1.5 year or 9 months, ATO is becoming more aggressive. Their benchmarking implementation, which is become more active, the super payday is coming. So small businesses are also already cash flow struggling. And on top of those changes, do you think, Mohammed, will put a lot of pressure on a small business and cash flow?
100%. We're already seeing the impact, right? The inflation is creeping to the roof. The interest rate, there's 3 interest rate rises, and they're already saying there are a couple of more in the pipelines. It's all over the news, so that's impacting. Government is continuing to spend. The inflation, the wars coming across, which has created a supply chain impact as well. So I think, don't forget, we are still getting a discount on our fuel at the moment, which will disappear because it's only a 3-month over there. And the moment that disappears, all of a sudden diesel, which is now $2.19, that's what I filled up my tank today, it's going to go straight to $3 all of a sudden. So this is going to hurt them and impact them. So I think this is a temporary reprieve that we are seeing at the moment. But I think in next 3 to 6 months, I see it's going to become very, very challenging, and people need to reassess their position, not only from a taxation but also from a cash flow perspective. How do they fit in? Whether they can afford, if they have an investment property, whether they can afford an investment property or not, and if that is a right structure, a right strategy. So I think there is a lot of consequences. So I'm really worried.
Sorry to interrupt, one of the things, what I have realized, while our discussion, and it came in my mind, Australia has become one of the most difficult country to grow the business,
Very challenging.
In this country, if you're working for someone, husband and wife working can have the best of the life, without having too much to worry about, for sure. That's how the labor structure is here in this country. But as a small business, you look at the regulations about taxation, GST, your superannuation payment, so you as a small business owners, you have literally no leverage, I've seen in other parts of the world, where the business owners are getting more benefit. Here, the business owners are having more stress. There is already a lack of resources in this country. So business owner is always, on the job,
Definitely.
So I think government should be doing something to support business owners, because the stress, because of the cash flow issues, because of the other things, the stress is more on the business owners.
Big time,
And this is
that's what we've been
already
watching.
increasing.
We've been seeing that an ordinary business owner and average small scale business owner struggles, and they have nowhere to go, but they have to continue because they have signed up the lease for next 5 or 7 or 10 years. So if you take an example of a small average restaurant owner, they are surviving because of Uber or online platforms, and Uber or online platforms, they take 20, 30, 25% out of their margin. So basically all they're doing is just
Pulling out the
sustaining.
expense, yeah.
Then they're not making money, and this thing will put a pressure on them.
I've seen and look, in a way, it's a good thing. This is a country of equality. No matter where you're coming from, the beautiful thing about Australia is actually here everyone is equal. On a beachfront, you can't make out who is doctor, who is plumber,
agree.
which is a beautiful thing. On the other hand, if you look at people, a couple working as a professional, or one trade person, one professional, or wherever they are working, they are more happier compared to business owners, because business owner is always under the
Lot of
stress.
stress, yeah.
And this kind of actions from government making things even more difficult, so I think, government should step in, do something for the business owners. There is already a lack of resources. You ask any small business, whether gas station, whether accountant, whether builder, everyone will say, okay, we are struggling with lack of people or lack of people who can work for them.
Yeah.
They're struggling for cash flow. They're struggling for, many things, and anything happens anywhere in the world straight affect us because we are relying more on overseas supply chain, so not an easy country to be a business owner.
Let's talk about strategies now. Long-term strategy and short-term strategy. So if I may request all three of you to suggest a strategy or strategies to the property investor, a short-term strategy which should be there in next 30 or 60 days and a long-term strategy. What will be or what could be your advice to investors, starting from you, Aziz?
Sure. So, in the short-term strategy, I would say to investors that, don't rush. Now, the market, which were absolutely crazy, will come to somewhat reality, not necessarily in Queensland and Western Australia, but, it'll still slow down a bit. Number of buyers buying a property would slow down. Auction rate would reduce. So you may be able to negotiate your terms, little bit of a pricing and stuff. For the brand new investors, they can still buy, but be careful. Don't overspend on it. Existing property, you would be able to get bargain in times to come. So just watch out for it. Don't buy whatever. Still, I would say that the basic principle in investment will apply. So buy something which is profitable, which is long term, which is developable, where there you can see a good value. The other strategy would be dual key, rooming, co-living, those kind of higher rental yield properties would always hold value no matter what taxation says. So just stick to the basic principles of investment. That's what I would say.
A good strategy of dual key. You make good rental income, at the same time you have a benefit of capital gain discount. So very, very, very good suggestion. What about you, Rash? What do you advise?
I think I agree with Aziz. Just don't react straight away. Take a deep breath. Make sure you have a good meeting with your accountant this financial year. Assess your situation, whether you're already in the game or getting into the game. The rule will be for all of us. We'll all need to just not panic or do anything. Just take a deep breath. This shall pass, So, and in the medium term, one of the things I spoke to Mohammed about before the podcast was the fact that you'll see a lot of people shift from that reactive buying into not so good fundamental areas to really blue chip areas, places that are heavily owner occupier, probably 80% owner occupier versus 20%. So moving your money out of those not so desirable areas with less amenities to better blue chip areas is something that I'd say medium to long term for investors to look at.
Yep.
I know definitely that's something that I'm looking to do myself, is just to make sure that we are in the right areas. We have a long-term view now.
Yeah.
That thing about flipping properties in and out is a costly exercise. So now you have to be very
careful what you do. Definitely, 100%. What about you, Mohammed?
So I'll talk from a very accountant's perspective. So contrary to both the gentlemen's advice where they told people to be calm, I'll say run to your accountants and just sit down before 30th June 2026, just so you can understand where does your asset portfolio actually sits. Are they going to be in the grandfathering provision? Are you actually thinking of buying a new property? Will that be an existing property or will that be a new home and land construction? Have a think of those asset classification as to where does that portfolio sits. Then start doing your cash flow modeling, right? So start thinking how much is it going to how much is the rent going to be yield coming through? How much is it going to end up costing me? What is my holding cost if I'm building a land and property? Can I actually afford it? Can I actually sustain this? And we've been discussing, right? The inflation is going to creep happen? Is there a couple of interest rate rises coming? Will I be able to afford and hold on to this property? Will there be a capital growth? We have been talking about good capital assets. Discuss with your investor, discuss with your specialist as to whether that is the right property for you. Is this going to hold value? Reach out to your property developers or your real estate agents who are probably expert in this matter and actually can guide you through that journey. Go with your gut instinct, whatever works for you. So just have a think from that perspective. Third, the holding structure, right, as to what is the best structure that suits. Contrary to what I believe across this panel, I still believe SMSF is the best way of dealing with that. But maybe company works for you, like Rash does for Rash, but the trust actually works with the 30% distribution tax. In your personal name, given that you may not be able to claim the offset against your normal wage income, you might be able to claim it as against the capital gains in the future. So what structure actually best works for you? What is the best fit over there? And then basically making sure the exit planning for any asset for that matter. If you are gonna basically, if you cannot afford to hold the asset, can you actually exit out of this? What is the best way of, from a tax perspective, from a cash flow perspective, to exit out of that property? So reach out to your accountant, have a chat, make sure you understand the pros and the cons. If it is the right decision for you, at least they can guide you and shape you from that perspective. So please, again, reach out to the experts who can help you from that perspective.
I think very, very good point and very valid point. And one of the other points what you touched base, and I want to eat your brain on that about capital growth. Do you think will there be a capital growth for existing property the way it's been there in last 3 to 4 years?
I think if fundamentals are great, what you will find through this budget is the principal place of residence will become king.
Mm-hmm.
People will end up putting money back into their houses with extensions, pools, predominantly keeping those assets looking the best,
Yep.
because that'll become the part of their retirement plan now. Because it's too complicated. Yeah, if it wasn't complicated already, we've just confused the entire Australia on what to do with their investment properties. So I think areas that have great amenity, good schools, like we spoke about earlier, those will end up becoming even harder to get into. Those areas will end up costing a lot more money, and that's how people will plan their retirement, is by uplifting their local neighborhoods that are fundamentally strong, near transport, good schools,
Yep.
and have a name for themselves as well, you know. So, if you look at places like Willetton and Bull Creek, these
Yeah,
places
high demand.
will go stronger. Places like Harrisdale and Piara Waters with good schools there will do well. Metronet networks in areas like on that east corridor, Bennett Springs, which is predominantly 80% owner occupied.
Yeah.
New film studio, train station, all these elements will become fundamentally strong. And I know I'm looking at my life going, oh, maybe I should put more money into my house and improve and get my things up and running now, because then that I know that money is secure in that
Definitely.
property.
And what's your take on it, Aziz?
Again, basic principles of investing, as Rash said, good schools, good amenities. Apart from that, I also believe that, because I'm into construction, so, I'll talk about from the construction point of view. I always tell my clients who are investors, they don't build basic investment properties, 2.4 ceiling, average looking bathrooms and kitchens. No. Always build 2.7 ceiling, good kitchen, good bathroom. So even though the market slows down, your rental yield, your property appreciation will not go down. The other thing as well, for a little while, the existing houses market would slow down a bit.
Yep.
But slowly people will adjust to it. There'll be recalibration will happen. Again, a property with a 5 townhouse potential, property with a dual key potential will always be a good investment. So stick to the basic rules.
And you said correctly, you said instead of going for 2.4 meter, you go 2.7 meter high ceiling. And now it matters the most, because the person who's going to build a new house, an investor, definitely the buyer will be the first home buyer, because it's a second buy.
Absolutely.
And for a first home buyer, they need a reasonably decent house rather than just a basic house.
I've never built a property with 2.4 ceiling ever. I don't give it to my client what I don't believe in. I've never personally built a property with ceramic tiles. I always give porcelain tiles or hybrid. So I believe that if an investor or a first-time buyer or whoever, if they spend $20,000, $25,000 more towards construction, they're going to get at least $100,000 more when they sell the property. Very basic 1:4 rule. For additional features you add into the property, I always tell my clients that look at it from a different perspective. That $25,000 divided by 30 years of loan, divided by 12 months. This is literally coming back to $150, or $100 a week. How many times we eat outside in a week?
Yeah.
So, your small sacrifice can give you $100,000 extra profit in your pocket. And I strongly believe in this principle. And from one property itself, to a duplex, to a small investment, I've seen my clients have achieved from $100,000 to $1.8 million equity in
Wow.
one dwelling. And I have an example in many suburbs. The only simple principle that stand out from the market: don't be those 80% traditional homeowners. Be into ideally top 20 or top 10%. Whatever you can afford. If you can afford single-story house, go for 2.7 ceiling. If you can afford double-story house, you can even make more money. But whatever you can afford, be in the top class of those categorized houses, your rental yield, your selling price. I want, for my client, when buyer walks in, the wife should be able to say that, look, we're going to buy this, and that's the fundamental.
So basically what I understood is there could be a chance that in future the investors, when they build a new property, they might be spending more money in compared to what they used to do a quick properties, a decent property, because the buyer could be the first time
Aziz
buyers.
makes a very good point, because if you look at that first buyer, if you're an investor and you're building in an area or you're buying from a developer like Aziz and the product isn't right, you might have taken the benefit out of the negative gearing and the CGT early in the piece. When you on-sell it to the next
Yeah.
person, there's no benefit carried on to them.
Definitely.
So you have to make sure that whatever you're going to sell, an owner-occupier is going to grab it, yeah? So I agree with you. That investment stock where you'll sell to another investor,
It has to be present.
it has to have those features that will appeal to a wide audience of owner-occupiers. Very good point.
A very good point. So basically what I understood from our conversation in the strategy session is we don't need to panic. We don't need to rush. But the most important aspect is we go to our accountant, we go to our consultant, we go to the professional advisor, sit down with them, draft a long-term and a short-term strategy, because that may include structure, may include the entity, how you're going to buy it. Is it a long-term plan, short-term plan, retirement plan? And also you need to have a good advisor and a good developer and good real estate agent. So that's a strategy. Sit down with the professionals and draw your plan. Now, after strategy, there are a lot of myths going around in the market, a lot of misunderstanding and a lot of myths. I've made, interestingly, some of the points which I've heard. Can we do a quick yes or no
Sure.
on those myths, and let's see what is our conclusion after our discussion. So the first one is, all property investors are immediately affected by the budget changes. Is it true or wrong?
False.
False.
Also, yeah.
And
In the
why
short
false?
term, yeah.
In the short term, because there's a grandfather's rule as well.
Exactly, the grandfather's
So
rule,
definitely
which
it's
is
a false. Okay. SMSF will lose their 1/3 CGT discount. True or false?
False again.
False. Again, we have gone through that. So right. New builds are always the better investment choice now. True or false?
False.
False.
Okay, agree with that. Ring fencing of negative gearing losses starts immediately from the budget night,
False.
because there's a transition on till 30 June 2027. The next one, property market will crash because of all these changes.
False.
False.
Supply is still an issue. And this budget's not going to solve that.
Right? Okay. If you signed a contract before the budget night, you are safe forever.
False.
False.
What about grandfather rule?
It's only up till 30th June 2027. and then you need to get a valuation at that point, which values will be very busy in those months leading up to it. And then from there, you got two rules now. Again, thank you to the Labour government for making this even more complicated. You got a pre 30 June calculation and then a post 30 June 2027 calculation under two separate systems. So thank you. We appreciate it. It wasn't hard enough. Am I correct, Mohammed?
Yeah, you're spot on. Spot on.
Can I say one more thing? Your new best friend, and you gentlemen have just made my Christmas list, because the accountants in my life have become my best friends now.
We're going for a holiday together. Is it?
You'll be invited to all my kids' birthdays, Diwali, anything else. I got to keep you guys very close.
On that note, let me ask everyone, who will be the most important person? Accountants, builders, or the real estate agent out of all three?
I think it's hands down accountants, because we can't decode this mess. Only you guys can, and respect to the accountants. Whenever the government tries to do something, COVID, anything else, changes in the building grants, it's the accountants that have to get these builders out of their insolvency issues. It's the accountants who have to answer the late night calls, and we don't get you guys don't get enough credit for how much we've gone through in the last 6 years with accountants and
COVID and everything.
And JobKeeper, Job Seeker. Now it's
Super
pay your
payday.
super in advance. Do this, do that, and you're dealing with everyday Australian business owners that have to work through all these mess with their accountants. So, gentlemen, you're on my Christmas list, Diwali list, Eid list, all the lists. You're
Definitely.
there. We're going to be very close.
I really appreciate for your good words, but Rash, what I've seen people, they said, okay, I've called this accountant, that accountant is busy for next 2 weeks, so go on to any other accountant. So do you think choosing the right accountant or a real estate or a developer or a builder makes a big difference in the new?
100%. In any industry, there's people that are good at what they do. There's some that are average and some that actually have no idea as well. Yeah. So you just got to make sure that you have a good team around you, and even more prevalent now moving forward. But again, for all these industries, people are going to go through some mental health issues. Take care of yourselves. Market changing shifts impacts everyone.
Definitely.
We've seen the mental health issues in the building space as well. People have lost their family homes. Marriages have broken down.
Yeah.
Again, thank you, Albo, for causing more of that down the track. So it's the cause and effect. So I think for everyone, just think about yourself. Slow it down for that reason. Have a good team around you so you can strategically plan, and just manage your money, because that can be a problem if you haven't so far.
So, I got a couple of points to make. One, obviously, accountant, are the most important person. Whenever the budget comes in, accountants, financial planners, people don't give enough credit to, but the business owners or even individuals who deal with accountants, my recommendation is, not to just look at bottom line money, what accountants are charging. They need to see the value they bring,
Definitely.
to any business. So, for example, a real estate agent, if there is a deal coming in which someone can't pay the mortgage, and overnight the deal has to be settled, the real estate agent is not going to call their worst client who is going to offer half the money. They're going to be calling someone who can take a quick decision. So, if you work together with your small businesses in whichever industry, building industry, real estate, accountant, and let them charge you fair money, so they can give you more attention, they can give you more time, and that value and cross references could generate more business rather than just negotiating price. And I've seen people, telling accountants, can you charge me this much? I've done this much. Not the best way. Same with the builders. If you don't allow your trade person, if an electrician coming to your home to fix a bulb and you tell them that, I'm going to pay you 30% less, he'll run away. So how do you expect builder to pay cheap to the labor and charge you cheap? Same way real estate agents, all has to be paid fair in this country to be able to help each other out. It's an entire ecosystem. which we are
Definitely.
feeding into. So we should look at and work together. If you want, I'm not saying no, don't negotiate with any of the suppliers or whatever. You do negotiate, but negotiate on the reasonable ground, not like in the fish market. So I would
Definitely.
recommend work together in a positive way, and help each other out.
And saying that, I think the good accountants who brings value and strategies will be very busy, reasonably more busier
Yeah.
than they were before. So be ready, be mentally ready. So if you need the right advice, right people, right team to help you, there will be a wait time, because it's not a small change. It's a big change. You have never seen an accountant or any of our team member come on a podcast in last 7 or 8 budgets, but this time we are here because this budget is totally different than whatever happened in the past. It means a lot of changes. If you are a business owner, if you are an investor, if you are a developer, changes are there, and that's where you need the right accountant. That is the part of the good strategy. Now let's say we open the room for everyone. Let's have an discussion, or let's shoot out question to each other if you have any question for anyone, and let's make it more interactive.
I have a question for Mohammed. What impact do you think this will have in the tech space? Because I feel this budget's actually destroyed any chance of international companies coming to Australia, because they have to also share big portion of their money, or local tech businesses trying to build stuff. I mean, they would want to build them overseas now.
So I think I would say there's a mixed reaction. That's how I would honestly put it. So from a big organization perspective, these changes are not as much impacting. We've already seen, right, that the big organizations don't pay any tax in Australia, full stop. Whether it's Google or whether it's Amazon, you just name it, and they have effective tax structures where they actually take the money away from Australian entities where actually the money is being made and paid out in in a tax haven kind of a places. So I think the bigger organizations are less impacted, but I think we had this discussion where it's actually the small to medium enterprises which is the heartbeat of Australia, in my humble opinion. I think most of them are quite adversely affected. This changes will drive a lot of people in terms of whether I think you've spoken about mental health, right? So it probably can drive them down. So my first point that I would say is acknowledging that there is that issue. But secondly, I would say that we need to strategize ourselves around the structure now a bit more. So it will be impacting them quite a bit. So I think it's about that we need to work around. That's my takeaway. Whether this hampers their growth into a bigger organization or something. I think you've already raised about this, that we are paying payroll taxes, we are paying land taxes, we are paying normal taxes 25%, GST at 10%. There is a conversation that's going on. Capital gains discount has now been taken away. Trust distribution, there is another tax that's been levied. So the amount and the volume of taxes that's being charged to the small to medium business enterprises, that's actually penalizing them quite a bit. And I think that's where I believe the growth will stop. And the innovation that drove Australia, that's driving Australia, that will, in my humble opinion, come to a bit of a stagnation. People will take a bit of a stock take. But again, in the next 6 months, we will find out which way we are heading. So that's my humble opinion as to where the economy is running.
Very good point.
Very good point. One question, I would like to ask to the open forum, and this is more kind of, I'm curious to see what will unfold. So, for example, government is making sure that, people do reasonable overtime. If they work on the weekend, they get paid double, the wages, or whatever, Have government ever thought, because of lack of resources, additional taxation, these are all the pressure on the small business owners, how many hours overtime every small business owner is doing, and have government ever thought what can be done to help them? Because that's a devastating fact that most business owners are spending more than 60 hours, and the work-life balance, it's imbalanced. If you do the honest survey, that's the fact. what government can do to help small business owners in a way where they get some kind of immediate relief, actually, because you are wounded with so many restrictions about you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do that. Come on, we are also human. We need to balance out. We need to still give time to our family. We still need to grow. We have taken a risk, so we should be earning more than a typical person doing a job. So how do we initiate this kind of a drive towards small businesses, where how do we help creating an awareness and creating giving a message to the relevant small business ministers within the government, that what can they do for every small business in this country?
A
What's
fully loaded question, isn't it? But,
But it's a very right question.
yeah, I agree. It's not. The government's not going to do anything for you. Is my opinion.
They never done it last 10 years. We have
I think
seen
you
it.
have to educate yourself, really be pragmatic about your future, your family, your business, your staff, and you're going to have to make some tough decisions in the coming years as well about what's important in your business, what isn't important, where do you cut this out. I mean, watching that budget made me think maybe I should just go work for someone. Might be easier because then I can actually take, a decent salary and go home and not have to worry about all this stuff that I have going on. And that's a bad thing for someone that wants to do more from an entrepreneur perspective. So I think the messaging they're giving us now is we don't care about business owners and entrepreneurs. What they can do is maybe rethink some of the decisions they've made. And we've seen it in history a few times. We've seen when the indexation was there in the late 90s, and within 2 years that got changed. We saw what happened in New Zealand when they removed negative gearing. Within 2 years, it came back. I think instead of making this thing worse, perhaps a sooner review than later, and see if we can actually maybe adjust it a little bit to give some relief back to business owners.
My 2 cents is probably slightly different to what you guys believe, but I think government has done a bit, not a lot, but a bit in terms of reduction of the tax rate, for example, right? It's dropped from 30% to 25%. They are investing in R&D incentives that they're giving. So they are working, whether it's flowing down in the right way or not, it's a different conversation that we can have for a separate day. But I still believe the government is doing a lot of stuff. What I would like to see more of is, if you look at our counterparts, for example, in Singapore, they have actually driven the innovations to the point that it's actually amazing. The tax rate is really at 15%, and people are actually prospering. So if you do work hard and if you do see the benefits, you're paying a fair share from a tax perspective. That's my takeaway. I'm not a big fan of a slab rates. I think a lot of people in the world are using it. I personally don't see that to be a fairer outcome. I think if you get what you work for and you get what you earn, and I think paying your share, which is equal, I think that is the way I would drive those kind of conversations. And that basically, to your point, what you were saying, Aziz, is if a small enterpriser, if he's working 60 hours, if he sees the value coming in from the door perspective and he's paying the same amount of tax that someone's working for 8 hours versus 12 hours a day, I think I would see that driving a lot of value in there. So that's something I would consider if I was to be in the government. So those are my 2 cents.
But on that point, Mac, what you said is government is working it, government is bringing incentive, but at a very slow pace. The amount of incentive or support what they're rolling out is very slow pace. I've seen people, especially the business owner, they work 50, 60, 70 hours, hardly to just sustain the business, not to make money. And Rash is 100% right. That owner would love to choose to be an employee rather than a business owner if he or she has an option. So the way government is becoming more and more strict, they are not letting small business to move. The bigger place, the bigger giants, the bigger businesses, like, for example, bigger gym in 2,500 square meter or bigger play area in 2,500 square meter, they make decent money in compared to a smaller gym where the people between $500,000 revenue to $1.5 million revenue, they are stuck in this between because the profit margin is less, the wage rate is higher, the super payday is there, the cash flow is there. They're stuck in the whole system and they're not probably not been able to come out of that system. Very rarely, I think out of 10, 7 businesses are okay, 3 businesses are struggling big time. And that's where some incentive from government, financial support from government can or may make a difference.
See, I don't believe in we live in a capitalist society, so I do not believe in handouts. I'm a very strong, but this is a personal opinion. I don't believe in handouts, full stop. I think you got to earn it. And again, you have to understand government is looking after the whole nation, not necessarily one or two individuals, right? So I hear the frustration that you're sharing because
it's not my frustration. I've seen people. I've seen people sitting in front of me and they're crying. They're literally stuck. And it's not 1 or 2. I've been talking to a lot of small businesses, and they do struggle. Even a decent scale restaurant, they don't make money. They look big, they are decent, but the wage benchmark, the food benchmark, the GST, the rents, what you left with?
I get your point, mate. I completely get your point that I think the small to medium enterprises are basically squeezed at every end. We discuss about the different taxes and the variation in the taxes. Maybe it's time the government starts having a look at the tax as a whole and whether that's the right way. Maybe they start looking at their own expenses. But you have to understand that we are talking about political determination over here as well. So I think that's where things become slightly more trickier. And just a change of capital gains from 50%, and I'm sure it survives so many governments, and after 25 years we're making such a big change. Also, I think that's driving a lot of emotion and angst at the moment. So I think we need to just work through this. And I think
right strategy, right structure, right planning, everything's from the scratch again, sit down and that will change.
You mentioned R&D and all these benefits. That's all good, I think, from my perspective. Maybe my business has the space to do something like that because I might have resources or partners that can jump in and try and make changes. But the everyday business, what are they going to do with R&D?
And R&D incentive is not significant. Once you go through a process, after a certain period, you get a smaller amount, and through that process, you may have invested so much time and energy of an individual that cannot or may not compensate the R&D incentive what you receive.
That is why it's an R&D, because if it does work, it does make you a millionaire, if not a billionaire. So it does work wonders either wise. That's what I'll leave it over there.
I think we don't want to go in very much detail.
I think let's wrap it up, gents.
Wrap it up.
That's been good.
Let's start closing down. A word of thanks from everyone. Aziz, you are the first.
Yeah, look, thank you, Tharal, for inviting me to this podcast. I really enjoyed conversation with Rash, yourself, and Mac. I've learned a lot, today, and I never thought to this depth, with this much peace of mind. So thank you very much for that. Basic principles of investment. Let's keep following that. Let's keep, doing the right thing, and hopefully, government will implement more strategies. We need to be aware. We need to fulfill our own moral responsibilities, our legal responsibility as a business owners, as whichever industry we are in. So, let's do the right thing, set up the right example.
Great. Thank you very much, Aziz. Rash, what are your closing statements?
Just don't panic. We still have a supply issue all around Australia, and magically more land will not appear, and magically more builders will not appear, more houses will not appear. So fundamentally, Australia's got a housing crisis. So don't panic. Just have a good team around you. And thank you to the business owners of Australia, the backbone of Australia, and thank you to the accountants as well. We appreciate you guys.
Thank you, Rash. Over to you, Mohammed.
I would like to thank the panel over here just for this really honest discussion. I think this is one of the biggest budget reforms. I've been in Australia for 23 years, and this is one of the biggest reforms that I have seen. All I would say is go to your accountants. Thank you.
That's a good one. Thank you very much. Barash, Aziz, Mohammed, thank you very much for joining today. It was a very fruitful discussion. A lot of points we never thought about. We have come across that point, and we all agree on two things. Number one, we don't panic, and number two, you need the right team to strategize. Find out the right strategy partner, find out the right real estate and property developer if you're going in that direction, because you will need their guidance, and we all are here. If you need our help, Team Universal is here, Team Rush is here, Aziz Popati and his team is there in Queensland. If you need any help anytime, we are here to help you, but choose the right partner, because that's the main thing. Moving ahead, moving forward, and planning is everything in the new budget. Thank you very much, guys, and you have a good night.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.